Hello, I'm Amanda Walker and you're watching IMF Today. Let's take a look at all the main events from today's annual meetings.
If we are to help people and fight inflation, we must ensure that fiscal and monetary policy go hand in hand.
Tackling corruption and increasing governance is today a priority.
We just can't stand still when we see the risks coming upon us.
Countries will do what they have to do, understandably, in the short term to keep their people warm, to keep the lights on.
We are on a bumpy journey to a better destination.
Hello and welcome to IMF Today. I'm Amanda Walker, and what a day of events here at IMF headquarters in Washington DC for the 2022 annual meetings. It started with Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva delivering her global policy agenda. We also had briefings on the first 3 of 5 regional economic outlooks, examining how specific areas will be affected by this week's global outlook. G20 ministers and central bank governors met. Singapore, Armenia and Kenya wrapped up the Governor Talk series, and the first of 4 new Economy Forum sessions hit the stage, as well as 2 capacity development talks and a debate on the global economy. And before the day was done, there was a cultural event from Morocco, where the annual meetings will be next year. Now, let's begin with that global debate. The panel emphasised the need for a strong foundation to react when shocks hit. Moderator Richard Quest suggested it might be too late for that, but the panellists disagreed.
I have to say, I don't accept the argument as well that it's ever too late not to build up fundamentals. I don't accept that, even in a crisis situation, even when we're facing great challenges, which we are, how we respond back to them and how we can frame a common response.
I didn't say it was never a good thing to do. I just simply said it was too late. If you're hoping that your fundamentals are strong enough now, you had 2 or 3 years when the previous MPs said, fix the roof while before
just to deal with that in a European setting, and just to make that point before we go on.
We are totally ganging on you, Richard.
We're ganging up, you're outnumbered.
Christine Lagarde said, when the sun is shining, fix the roof. We know as human beings that the probability of fixing the roof when the sun is shining is not that high. But when it is raining, what do? We fix the roof. I'm more optimistic than you are. First, I do believe that we have done really a tremendous job in putting a floor under the world economy in 2020, 2021, during COVID. What is different today is that the task for policymakers is much harder.
We've heard a lot this week about the fund's readiness to help manage a more systemic debt crisis. There are also calls for the private sector to strengthen coordination on debt resolution. One of this week's seminars focused on debt restructuring, and Elena Duggar of Moody's was part of the panel. Thanks for joining us, Elena. So we know that more than 60% of low-income countries are at risk of debt distress. The IMF has been calling for countries to join the common framework to streamline the process. What's stopping them?
Thank you for having me today. It is more stressed economic environment and the debt environment that we are going into. And I think we at Moody's see that as well, as it was echoed in the meetings the whole week, it was echoed in the debate on the economy today. We think we are moving into more challenging credit conditions going forward. We're looking at high inflation, high interest rates, slower global growth. Emerging markets are going to be living in a world, in an environment which will see tighter financing conditions and slower trade growth, so much less favorable external environment. And also in the world where the risk of more negative economic outcomes, of deeper recession or deeper contractions is very, very high. And normally that translates into a lot of financial markets volatility and a lot of stop and go episodes of market access for countries and for other issuers. So we do think that we'll see more stress in terms of countries. We do think that we will see a pickup in the sovereign default rate going forward. We don't expect, maybe I want to qualify a little bit, we have a slightly different view on the kind of extent of the crisis, and I think it has to do with the fact that we look at our rated portfolio is more the market access countries, and the World Bank looks at more of the low income countries than we look at. But we would expect default rates to pick up. We do not expect a widespread emerging markets debt crisis, but we will see more defaults. And I can give you an example
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask you actually, we have talked about debt a lot this week. It's been very much on the agenda. What does that look and feel like for those countries that are experiencing and living with that debt?
Look, defaults are very painful events. They're very, very severe events. Countries, our research shows that if you look historically over the last 30 years, what default events look like, you're looking at debt crisis, so very stressed fiscal government finances, fiscal metrics. You're looking at 90% of the defaults are associated with recessions, economic contractions. You're looking at 60% of the events associated with either a currency crisis or systemic banking crisis. So this is a very, very painful periods for any country to go through. And we already, just to give an example, we are already seeing some of that. So we are already seeing 6 sovereign defaults this year. And the normal, kind of in normal times, that is about 1 to 2 defaults a year. So we're already seeing a big spike, and we're already spike at the level at which we saw during the coronavirus pandemic in the middle of 2020.
And just briefly, is the help going to be there for these countries that are currently going through these painful conditions that you just described? Is the support there?
Look, we are seeing, that's, I think, more of a question for what comes out of these meetings at the end of it.
What sense have you got?
The sense we're getting from the meetings is the World Bank and the multilaterals and the IMF are stepping up support for countries. There are new programs being rolled out to deal with some of the fiscal challenges. I think, what I have a sense which is a little bit different than, a few months ago. I feel there's more of a shared understanding that we are moving into a more challenging world and that those issues will need to be addressed. And I think that shared understanding hopefully helps everybody come to the table.
Okay. Elena, Duggar, thanks so much for joining us. Challenging, I think, is the word that everyone can agree on in this building. The World Economic Forum gives an overview of the picture for the entire planet, but what we've seen today is the regional outlooks, which break things down to specific areas. Today, heads of 3 of the IMF's 5 regional departments discussed the impacts that could be ahead. Jihad Azor, director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department, was one of them. And I asked him why it's so important to be back in person this year.
Well, the most pressing issue is to have all these delegations here have the opportunity to meet most of them in order to exchange about the priorities for the region, as well as also what the fund is trying to do to help those countries. In terms of pressing economic issues, of course, this year is a transition year. Uncertainties are high, problems are growing, although this year the outlook for both Middle East and Central Asia region will be acceptable. But looking forward, they need to address a certain number of important issues. Inflation is one, food security is another one, and also the tightening of financial conditions. This is the third important issue for many of the countries in the region.
And what solutions are you hoping you can get close to this week for some of those issues?
Look, the fund has been very responsive. In the last 2 years, the fund has provided a lot of support to the region. In 2020 with COVID, last year with SDR allocations. This year we have discussions with some countries where we are in active discussion and negotiation for programs. I hope we will be able to advance. For others is to look forward and try to address what are the shocks that they may face and how to address them. As you know, we have 2 new facilities that will help address food security issue and climate transition. Those are 2 important issues for the region. We are exchanging with the authorities on how to address that. In addition to that, as you know, Caucasus and Central Asian countries are affected by the war in Ukraine. And the purpose of our discussion with them is to see how this war is affecting them and how the fund can help alleviate this pressure and help them in their transition.
The outlook yesterday was pretty gloomy. How can the more vulnerable countries brace themselves for what lies ahead, which is going to be tough?
Of course, and especially if you put in perspective that 2 years ago we had the COVID crisis that has eroded the capacity of those countries to respond. And this is really one of the most pressing issues that we, during this week, we're discussing with the authorities from different countries on how we implement the fragile and conflict state strategies that the fund has developed in order to provide the best support. Support is not only financial, it's also on the technical side, on the policy side. And we have two very important centers, one in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan, and another one in the Middle East, in order to provide capacity development to those countries.
Now, we've seen delegations walking past, we've seen people that you've waved to, people that you know. What difference does it make to you to be back in person?
Oh, it makes a big difference. We have in the last 2 years been very effective in dealing with the crisis, but nothing will replace face-to-face discussions. Nothing will replace this way of interacting, connecting, and also developing the trust that we need in order to fulfill our mission.
Okay, Jihad Azur, thank you so much for joining us on IMF Today.
Thank you for having me.
In the last hour, an important step forward for countries dealing with climate change, pandemics and other structural challenges. The Resilience and Sustainability Trust is up and running. Joining me now to explain it all are Uma Ramakrishnan and Craig Beaumont, both Deputy Directors with the IMF. Thank you both for joining us on IMF Today. So first of all, tell me what made it possible to get this off the ground?
So thank you very much for having us here today. It's a happy day. It's a historic day for the institution. We have the Resilience and Sustainability Trust up and running, and we are very proud of that. So the genesis of this was the 650 billion SDR allocation that happened last year. And a lot of the large percentage of that allocation went to advanced countries. And so the question was, is there a way for us to multiply the effect of that SDR allocation to be able to help the countries that are in greater need? So the question was, is there a way for SDR channeling, for us to channel SDRs from countries with strong external positions to countries with greater need? So that was the conceptual idea that we began with, and we worked on thinking through how that might be possible. And after thinking through many ideas, we started with 7 options. We narrowed it down to 3 options, of which RSD was one of those. And as they say, the rest is history.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm so sorry. I think we're having some technical difficulties with your microphone, so do bear with us for that. But Craig, first of all, which countries are actually going to benefit from this?
So there's about 3/4 of the whole membership that could access the RST. So all the low-income countries and many of the middle-income countries which are vulnerable, especially the small countries. So that I think there's 140 or more can actually borrow from the RST if they want to tackle long-term structural challenges.
And how do they qualify?
I think the main qualification is an interest to address these long-term challenges and willingness to engage on the policies that will help address those. There's also a need to have a program with the IMF to make sure the macroeconomy is stable.
Okay, I hope you're back up and running. And I want to ask you, but this is what it's about, isn't it? Coming together and seeing results like this.
Yep. So I must say that this is one of those windows of opportunity that we had where the entire membership was willing to come together to make best use of this opportunity that we had. So we had amazing support from various stakeholders inside the fund, outside the fund, our shareholders, who were very encouraging in helping us think through how we want to take this forward. We had ideas that were coming. In our various engagements with stakeholders, the ideas were getting shaped on how to design this, on how to think about what would be the structural challenges that we might want to think about. And what is historic about this is the first long-term lending instrument. So it's a low-cost, long-term financing instrument for the fund, which we normally don't do. So this is the first of a kind where we are lending at a 20-year maturity. Usually our maximum is 10 years. So this provides a level of concessionality that we have not seen before, which is, given the times, it's a useful instrument to have. Particularly the long-term challenges, the structural challenges like climate and pandemics, which are the current two priorities that the Trust will address, are so critical. And as is repeatedly said, climate crisis is an existential crisis. So we are happy to be able to be a part of that conversation from both from a surveillance standpoint and now from a lending standpoint. And we also have capacity development in that regard.
Okay, and Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've got 20 billion. The ultimate goal in terms of fundraising is what?
The ultimate goal is just over 40 billion, maybe 42 billion. So we have made really good progress, starting with the 20. We have about 17 billion already pledged that we just need to make effective, and that will happen early next year. And even after we make that total of 37 billion available, we're going to keep on working to complete the whole funding.
And for both of you, just more generally, what's the momentum been like this year, being back in person and having the buildings full and busy and full of conversation and full of agreements like this?
The energy is amazing. Seeing it now, I realize how much I missed it. Right. So it has been phenomenal being here, seeing people in person. It's so great to be back.
Craig?
We just had a photo opportunity with the small village that helped build the RST got together, and it was really quite a moment.
Yeah, because of course this is year-round work. This isn't just coming together for meetings twice a year. This is something that demonstrates how much is going on throughout the year.
Exactly, and it was almost unachievable at the time of conception, and the fact that we were able to deliver it in the time that we did, I think, speaks to the commitment of the institution and the shareholders to make this happen. And it's a proud moment.
Uma, Craig, thank you both so much for joining us on IMF Today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, we're talking about the energy in the building there, and I want to take a moment just to describe what it's like to be here in these last few days, what the atmosphere has been like. Now, one striking thing is, as Uma was saying, the amount of energy that's generated by gathering back in person for the first time in 3 years, whether it's the opportunity to catch one of the seminars or perhaps just a quick conversation in a hallway with a fellow delegate. There is definitely that sense of urgency and seriousness to these conversations, and with good reason. The pressing issues of debt distress, inflation and rising interest rates are never far from the lips of the delegates here. And a lot of the focus here this week has been on the health of the global economy. But another important aspect of the IMF's work has also been in the spotlight, and that's capacity development. In other words, training governments and institutions around the world about best practice. It happens all year round, and it's handled by the Institute of Capacity Development. And I met up with ICD Director Dominique Deruel to hear more.
So what, capacity development in short, right, is creating strong institutions with well-trained people in them so that they can deliver good policies and implement these good policies. And basically, without that, your institutions will not function. And this is even more important these days when many countries around the world, all of them, feel very strong shock, and they need to really have resilient institutions to respond to this shock.
So here is your area.
Right.
Tell us a bit more about specifically what you do.
So what do? We do a lot of different things. We work basically with ministries of finance, central banks, statistical institutions to basically, let's say, improve the tax systems, improve the transparency of the budget so that everyone can participate in the budget process, strengthen let's say, the financial institutions so that they are stable, help countries build statistics because you need good data to take a good decision. And then we do train a lot of people. We train people in classroom, standard classroom, and we also have an immense program that is right behind me on online, where we have trained more than 150,000 people so far, and that numbers keep rising.
So what does it mean to you to have this presence here and to have people actually in the building?
So for us it's fantastic because it allows us to meet all of the countries we work with, or at least a big bunch of the countries we work with, hear very directly from them what is their specific needs, how can we help them as best as we can, and then very importantly for us, to relate these efforts, right, in a sense that a little bit, I would say, in the background, right? You know, this sort of more technical stuff that is not really on the front page, but related to the economic problem that they face now. And to say, look, you're facing this economic problem now, you're working very well with our colleagues, you know, in the different regions to sort this problem together. How can we, on the institutional side, help you move and resolve this problem? So you have both the policy actions and sort of the institution building behind it and the people building, so to speak, behind it to be able to solve these problems together.
And obviously we have so many people coming here with their own specific aims and objectives. What will make you a happy man at the end of this week in terms of what you want to achieve?
I think what makes us really happy is to hear and to discuss with our counterparts either, yes, what you're delivering to us is good, let's keep doing it, or we have even a better idea, and we say, and then work together and say, that's fantastic, let's do that. Let's do it in this way. You know, for instance, you know, during COVID, we learned obviously a lot about how we can work remotely. So we're working very hard, for instance, how we can combine, you know, work together, physically together, with remote work to be, you know, as efficient as possible with the amount of resources that we have, so that in a sense we can demultiply our efforts. So at the end of the day, what makes me happy is to make my member countries happy.
Okay, well, good luck with the rest of the week. Dominic Derrell, thank you so much for joining us on IMF Today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Members of the G20 ministerial met for most of the morning and into the early afternoon. It's a group of the 20 most influential economies in the world. Its members include the G7 countries, China, India, Indonesia, and other big players. They have a broad global agenda, but the so-called finance track is focused on monetary, financial, and tax issues. It's handled by the Ministers of Finance and the central bank governors who met here at the IMF today. The chair of the G20 rotates every year. Last year it was Italy. Next year it will be India. But this year, the chair of the G20 is Indonesia. I spoke to Peri Warjio, central bank governor of Indonesia, in the last hour, and I asked him what accomplishments the G20 has made this year under the finance track.
Well, this is what we are grateful on the financial track. As I told you, a number of progress of the policy make, financial sector regulation, cross-border payment, CBDC, central bank digital currency, is progressing very well, financial inclusion, sustainable finance, just name it. So many progress that we achieved on the finance track. This is actually the legacy that Indonesia achieving, and also we want to look forward further progress for the legacy under India next presidency. Of course, Indonesia will stand ready to support India and to support G20 to advance this many legacy going forward.
And that conversation will be carried on at the G20 Barley Summit,
yes,
which is
yes
on the horizon. Tell me about that briefly.
Well, we already discussed with my president together with Minister Sri Mulyani. Of course, there is Indonesia and the leaders, coming leaders, want to also call the leaders of the G20 to recover together, recover stronger.
Peri Warjio, thank you so much for joining us on IMF today.
My pleasure.
Next year, this gathering will leave these buildings and head back out on the road. AM23 will be in Marrakesh, Morocco, and excitement is already building. If you're here, you really need to check out the Morocco Handcraft Pavilion. And if you're not, let me show you around.
So next year's meetings are in Morocco, and this pop-up stand has taken over the gallery in HQ1, and it's really all about celebrating Moroccan culture and crafts. Dunya, you are in charge of the pop-up shop.
Yes,
Talk
welcome.
us through all this amazing stuff that we can see. What's
Absolutely. This is a wonderful artist. He's been in the business for 30 years. This is a craft that has been passed down through generations, and he's showing us how the Moroccan bilgha, which our Moroccan slipper, is made. It takes about 3 days to complete, and he's using noble materials, leather, all throughout to create this beautiful piece. These pieces are truly an art form.
Yeah, wow. And if you want something to go
with that,
these are
absolutely, we
amazing.
have
Look
here
at
Fadel
these.
Al-Gadi, who is one of the top designers in Morocco, and she does beautiful work in terms of elevating the Moroccan kaftan to the modern woman.
Right, so kaftan's rugs here?
Yes, these are Soufiane Zarib's rugs. These are made traditional also, and they're inspired by Moroccan architecture. They're modern in their aesthetic, but their traditional way of making them. They're double knotted, and they're inspired by Beni Warain, traditional working. High pile as well, so really good quality.
And if you've had a particularly stressful meeting, you can come here to the Henna Beauty Bar and have, look at this. This is so intricate and beautiful.
And this is henna. This is in every festivity of Morocco, weddings, celebrations, and it's just our tattoo.
Wow. And calligraphy over here?
Absolutely. Hand-done writing. And of course, this is our art. It's over furniture, it's in architecture, and this is the way we showcase what we do.
Wow, okay, let's have a look over here. I see tea, but not the British kind.
No.
There's no milk and sugar here,
No,
and it's all about aerating the tea, right? As you were saying, pouring it high.
Exactly. The higher the pour, the better it is, just like wine. You have to aerate it a little bit. And again, tea is a staple of Morocco. We drink it all day, and we just love it.
And again, if you need a bit of relaxation after all the meetings going on, retail therapy, right?
Exactly, exactly. Here, this is my company, as well as 2 other companies. Dunya Home, we do lighting and home decor and furniture, as well as Shabby Chic and Mille Souls. All these brands are made in Morocco 100% using noble materials. So we use brass, copper, nickel, silver. We use walnut wood, raffia, cotton, absolutely beautiful stuff that we elevated to the modern home.
Wow, fantastic. So it's designed really to give people here at the meetings a bit of light relief and also a true sense of Morocco, where the destination will be come 2023.
And that pavilion is open every day this week from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. You can also take part in a tea ceremony and buffet tomorrow from 1:45 till 3 in the HQ2 atrium. That event will also feature a musical performance. Now, this packed week is racing by, and with just 1 day left in the annual meetings, some of the biggest business is yet to come. Tomorrow's crescendo includes the annual meetings plenary, where all 190 countries come together. Right after that, it's the IMFC plenary, which will set the work of the IMF for the next year. There'll also be a signing ceremony between the European Union and IMF, delivering on the Poverty Reduction and Growth Trust. The New Economy Forum wraps up, as well as our seminar series. This last one is about CBDCs for financial inclusion. That's it from IMF Today. Thank you for joining us. We'll leave you with some of the best pictures of the day from the wonderful photography team here at the IMF. Let's do it again one last time tomorrow.